転生
What if Naruto was the Specters of the Forgotten on Twilight Part 1? Specters of the Forgotten by Daniel de Cobre. Chapter 1. Disclaimer. I don't own any of the stories. Prologue. The sun has once more shined with the luster of its prime, and life has once again begun to sprout from the erstwhile blood-drenched and barren soil. The human race, it would seem, has weathered and almost forgotten the terrible wars waged by their ancestors in the distant past that threatened their very existence. Though by some peculiar twist of fate, has also united them as a single species and triumphed upon the malign and great entities that seek to smother their flame. Or so they say. As time passed by, legends became the accepted truths. Paradoxically, as humanity developed and advanced, these so-called accepted truths has become legends once more. It is intriguing how the age of the shinobi came to its untimely end, almost 10,000 years ago. Naruto Uzumaki, the greatest hero known to this era, has vanished without a trace at the conclusion of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. Grand and majestic monuments of him was commissioned and erected in the heart of every hidden village, not only to commemorate his valor but to serve as a potent inspiration to all aspiring ninjas. Though people can't help but wonder what happened to the young shinobi. It was a general conjecture that he, along with the rest of the allied shinobi forces, has perished, sacrificing their lives to subdue and seal the ten-tailed beast. However, there are some who believe that he is still alive and will return once more when his people needed him most. The truth, however, is a bitter pill to swallow, for he never came back. Not in this timeline, at least. A mysterious plague then swept the land like lightning from a cloudless sky, killing countless in its wake. Soon war broke between the survivors competing for resources. Cities and settlements were razed and civilization began to decline and rapidly devolve. The earth was painted red from the menagerie of violent deaths. What happened next, however, is even grimmer. An unknown series of cataclysms occurred that shattered and sunk in the elemental nations beneath the unforgiving ocean, entombing all but a few of its denizens in a watery mausoleum. The handful of survivors fled to distant lands where they encountered and interacted with the primitive locals. With their knowledge of chakra and more advanced sciences like metallurgy and medicine, they uplifted these primitives and their descendants ruled over them as kings. However, as decades passed, a new problem arose that effectively erased the legacy and all but a few signs of the elemental nations. For reasons unknown, the chakra levels of subsequent generations is gradually dampening, and thus their children and their children's progeny has become weaker over time. They attempted to rectify this by crafting technological devices meant to amplify their existing chakra and by carefully managing their gene pool through selective marriages and later on inbreeding, but to no avail. Chakra has continuously diminished until it became no longer existent. Furthermore, all knowledge, memory and records of the survivors and their descendants literally ceased to exist as time continued to flow. As if it was the sublime machinations of a great and terrible power who, by reasons known only to itself, willed them to fade from existence. All that remained of their legacy are the chakra-focusing artifacts they crafted eons ago, which was discovered later on by modern archaeologists and dismissed as meager works of art or ceremonial contrivances, not knowing its higher purpose. Dash dot 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 dash. Naruto, a calm and mysterious voice whispered. Naruto found himself in a dark and eerie environment. The only thing breaking the silence is what seemed to be the sound of dropping water and an unseen flowing river. Who are you? What is this place? Am I dead? Naruto asked in bewilderment. I am Hagoromo Otsutsuki and we are in your dream, within the depths of your subconscious mind, the voice said in an astute tone as he revealed himself to be the Sage of Six Paths. The Jubi. I must, Naruto said frantically, recollecting his predicament before the dream. It is too late for that, my child. Almost 10 millennia has passed since then, the sage explained to Naruto, which startled the blonde shinobi into disbelief. No, that's impossible. I was there. I just passed out a few minutes, hours at the most, that's all. Naruto protested in incredulity, for what the sage said to him makes no sense. Then memories of the final battle flashed into his head. The 10 tails, dot was sealed within me, he muttered as reality finally trickled in. Yes. You are now the Jichiriki of the one-eyed god. You must use its power wisely. Though, I'm afraid that what I have told you is no less than the truth, the sage exclaimed in a solemn tone. And you waited this long to tell me that, old man. Why? Naruto inquired in anguish with a sorrow-filled voice and a trace of brewing rage. A dark god barred me from this sphere. He is immensely powerful, I was no match. I am only able to form a connection with you just now because he is temporarily distracted for some reason. I fear that it won't last. Even as we speak, I can sense that he's already aware of my presence and soon he will banish me once more. But before he could, I have decided to transfer my remaining power to you. You shall once again be the protector of mankind, Hagoromo said in a calm and philosophical tone as he proceeded to gift Naruto his remaining power. The sage brought his hands together and placed them into Naruto's forehead, then proceeded to transfer his chakra, wisdom and an aspect of his personality to guide the young shinobi in his tasks. Naruto felt a warm sensation as the power of the great sage flowed within him and revitalized his body. A golden shroud of chakra began to engulf him. Then it formed into a light gold-colored coat with a dark-colored bodysuit that covers of his torso underneath, or that's what it superficially looks like, reaching down to his arms and to his knuckles, and down his legs, stopping just above his sandals, which also changed color. A light-colored circle appeared where his seal was placed, as well as golden magatama markings on his collar. Subsequently, truth-seeking balls began to form. They were orbs of black malleable chakra the size of a fist and containing all 5 nature transformations and yin-yang release. Cool, Naruto amusedly exclaimed as he held out his hand and a truth-seeking ball hovered above it. What should I do now? He then queried the sage, unsure of how he'll proceed. First you must wake up, the sage resonated with a smile as he slowly fades and vanished. Dash dot 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 dash. Bimini Island 1855. Faintly glowing, rippled purple eyes slowly opened. Naruto looked around and although it is pitch black his eyes were perfectly capable of perceiving the environment. He found himself in an underground cavern of glossy obsidian riddled with clusters of hexagonal crystal stalagmites and stalactites, and a series of interconnected subterranean rivers coursed within the natural edifice. The sound of the flowing streams, along with the rhythmic falling drops of water from the crystal stalagmites created a pleasing harmonic melody. Shinra Tensai. Naruto instinctively exclaimed with a strong commanding voice. A huge shockwave of repelling force emanated from his body and smashed into the rocks above him like a giant's hammer. This created a large geyser of dust and rubble that was spotted by a passing steamship, the Isabel, who was on her route to England after a largely unsuccessful expedition from the southern Americas. Naruto emerged from the crater and incoherently limped for some distance before he collapsed from the strain of activating his Rinnegan for the first time and the stupor caused by suddenly unleashing vast amounts of chakra after his millennia-long inertness. Sir, there is some kind of explosion on the island, a crewman peering on a spy glass yelled. A man named William Kennedy, who is the head of the said expedition, took his spy glass and peered in it, seeing an expanding cloud of dust akin to that elicited by barrels of gunpowder that has been lit. He decided to investigate and gave the order. Captain, turn starboard into that island and instruct your men to prepare the boats. Aye, sir. The captain concurred and began cascading orders to the rest of his crew. The Isabel seemed to bristle with life as her crew was roused to activity. The helmsman turned the ship starboard and headed to the island as ordered. While others of the crew prepared to lower the jollyboats to ferry people once they get into a sufficient proximity to the island. An exploration team was assembled to investigate the mysterious explosion. Leading it was William Kennedy himself and a rather stout Spanish gentleman named Gaspard Villalobos, who's also the ship's first mate and second in command. Once the jollyboats hit shore they instantly noticed Naruto lying senseless on the beach. It's just a young lad, no older than my boy, said by a middle-aged crewman as they approached and got a closer inspection of the shinobi. Maybe one of the locals. A relatively naive crewman inquired. Nay. He doesn't look like it, the first replied. The boy's features are distinctly Caucasian, and the clothes he's wearing, well, I never seen the likes of it before. He could be a survivor from a shipwreck. This part of the world is known for its sporadic and unpredictable storms after all. Gaspard Villalobos mused as he tried to deduce the predicament that befallen the golden-haired boy. Bring him to the ship. Let's save our questions when he wake up, William Kennedy said looking at the unconscious Naruto. Naruto was carried in one of the jollyboat and transported back to the Isabel while the rest of the crew stayed on the island to investigate. They found nothing unusual except a fairly large crater, the size of a house. Found anything interesting, sir? The captain greeted William Kennedy as he returned and board the ship. None, save for a depression caused by the earlier explosion we've witnessed. What of the boy? Our guest has regained consciousness though he's still quite weak. Dr. Newton said he will be fine but would need a few days to regain his strength. Very well, William Kennedy nodded to the captain. Dash dot 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 dash. Steamship Isabel, the next day. After some hours of rest, Kennedy and Villalobos decided to give their guest a visit. How is he, doctor? Villalobos inquired. It's amazing. He shouldn't even be able to stand at this state but it appears that he has fully recuperated in just a short amount of time. Dr. Michael Newton, a lanky, blonde-haired Englishman said astounded at how fast Naruto has recovered. He later migrated to the US and settled in California a few years after the expedition. He is Mike Newton's great-grandfather. You boy, what is your name? Kennedy inquired in a calm but stern tone. Naruto looked at him with a bemused stare and began speaking in the language of the elemental nations of which none of them could understand. Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking care of me and all, but can someone please tell me where the hell am I? Naruto said with a bit of bewilderment in his face. Did anyone caught any of that? A perplexed crewman inquired. We can't comprehend a thing he's saying and apparently he can't understand our language either, Dr. Newton exclaimed. It sounds very much like Japanese, Villalobos speculated, his hand rubbing his chin. I didn't know you speak the Orient, the captain said in amusement. Oh, I'm quite fluent at it. You see, there's this beautiful Japanese girl I met in Manila when I was but a young lad serving as a cabin boy for a merchant galleon, several years ago. She taught me a few words and a few more other things if you know what I mean. Villalobos reminisced in a jolly tone that made him and the rest of the crew burst in a roaring belly laugh. Then talk to him, Kennedy instructed the Spaniard with an impassive face. So Villalobos did as he was ordered and started speaking in a heavily accented Japanese, asking the boy his name. Modern Nihongo is a linguistic evolution of the more archaic language of the elemental nations and thus Naruto found it to be only partially intelligible but he caught enough words to deduce his inquirer's question. Naruto, he replied pointing a finger to himself. What did he say? Kennedy queried. I think he said his name is Naruto, Villalobos replied, uncertain. Very well then Mr. Naruto, welcome to the Isabel, Kennedy exclaimed, extending his arm for a handshake. Though he couldn't understand the strange man in front of him, Naruto knew that he is extending a gesture of friendship and so he responded. But as soon as their hands made contact, Naruto, through his latent six-path sage power has inadvertently gazed into the mind of William Kennedy and saw what the latter saw in his lifetime and learned much from it, including the English language. Whoa! What was that? Naruto said in English as he recovered from the confounding experience. I thought he couldn't speak English, the captain said more suspicious than confused. I do now, Naruto shrugged dumbfounding everyone. As to how he did it he never told them. Days have passed and the crew's suspicion of the shinobi has eventually quelled. He befriended them and using the knowledge he gained from William Kennedy's mind, Naruto fabricated a story to satisfy their curiosity. He told them that he was in the service of a merchant ship, acting as a translator. One day, as their ship was en route to Acapulco, a violent storm appeared out of nowhere, battering them with violent winds and colossal waves. The last thing he remembered was a large waterspout approaching their vessel, violently reaping its foresail and breaking a mast before he felt a debris struck his head and blacked out. Everyone who heard his story became pale and felt their blood curdled as the horrific account is nothing short of every seafarer's nightmare. They pitied Naruto but at the same time felt a huge pride for him as it's quite rare indeed to see what he saw and live to tell the tale. Months have passed and the Isabel reached London. Naruto decided to explore this new world and learn everything he could from it. He bid farewell to the crew of the Isabel and thanked them once more for the kindness they showed him. Dash dot 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 dash. Years have passed and Naruto learned the existence of curious creatures living in the sewers of London. They look like ordinary men and women, but much paler. They have cold skin, red eyes and fed on the blood of humans to sustain their own damned existence. He decided to observe these cloistered beings and study them and their behavior. It seemed that their reflexes and agility are much faster than what modern humans are able to see. They also have sharper and more attuned senses designed to track and predict their prey like apex predators. According to the stories he heard, these undead beings are called vampires. They subsist by feeding on the life essence of living creatures, specifically their blood. When it became clear to Naruto that these vampires were beyond any help and are a threat to the people living above, he decided to destroy them as humanely as possible with powerful fire jutsus. Curiously, he also discovered that some of these vampires have special abilities like telepathy and lesser element manipulation, though these abilities are inferior and less versatile compared to those possessed by any given Jonin or talented Chunin. He hypothesized that these rare individuals may have been descended from the shinobis who survived the destruction of the elemental nations, and the same process that turned them into undead beings may have also awakened the latent powers of their lineage. He became much engrossed studying these creatures, for he thought that they would be the key to unlock the elusive mysteries of the past. His quest has led him to travel all over the known world and beheld strange and fascinating things and beings alike. Such of these are the feral werewolves that reminded him so much of the Inuzuka clan, Kiba and Akamaru in particular. On one of his travels to Italy he encountered a vampire named Cullen who he found interesting, for he is unlike the rest of his kind. This vampire prefers to drink animal blood. This is due to his belief that it's much more humane than drinking the blood of humans, thereby killing them. He revealed himself to the Carlyle, who found him equally fascinating as well. For the latter never saw the kind of immortality Naruto has. They became good friends, and in time Naruto told him the truth about himself and how he acquired his immortality. He told him about how the 10 tails sealed in him supercharged the longevity and regenerative abilities of his Uzumaki lineage to the point of agelessness and immortality. Any damage he sustains, which requires an immensely powerful force, instantly need up within moments as if it was never inflicted on the first place. He no longer needs to eat nor drink for nourishment due to the fact that he passively absorbs and assimilates nature energy that fuels him, though he does eat food nonetheless for the pleasure of it and because it reminds him of his humanity. Years have passed yet again and Carlyle decided to move to the New Worlds, feeling that there's nothing more for him left in Europe and citing the possibilities of a new and more prolific life in the Americas. Soon after, Naruto decided to migrate as well. Late 1800s, Texas. It was in the apex of the Southern Vampire War that Naruto landed on the shores of the United States. He traveled for a while, then decided to settle in Pleasanton, a sleepy little community at the time, south of San Antonio. The town is indeed true to its name, for he found the weather and the simple folks living there to be no less than pleasant. "I can get used to this," he said with a smile on his face while basking in the gentle rays of the autumnal sun. He had settled in town for about 4 years and a half now, and built a cozy and lofty house near what is now known today as Ruby Hill. Though he occasionally sends his shadow clones far and wide to investigate. Everybody knows him as the luckiest young prospector on the face of the earth, for he always came back in town from his numerous year-long expeditions with a satchel full of gold. In reality, the gold is a product of a jutsu he developed by combining earth element transformation and magnet release chakra to mystically extract any kind of metal from crude ores, and later on he became so proficient at the technique that he was able to extract metal such as gold to its purest form on the very landscape he is standing on. Young women would always blush and giggle at the sight of him, for he is the most eligible bachelor in town. This is not only in part due to his extraordinary good looks but also because of his affluence. Though people can't help but wonder why hadn't he found himself a wife, or at the very least doesn't hire any domestic help. He is a wealthy man after all, and frugality isn't really a mandatory virtue. Furthermore, his residence is quite sizable and maintaining it would require a servant or two. To all who curiously asked him such questions, he just responded that he values his privacy and enjoy living a bachelor's life. One winter night he encountered a group of vampires who killed a local man. 3 of them were newborns and the last one is a blonde male wearing a Confederate uniform. His skin covered with scars from past battles. Though these scars are normally invisible to humans, they are his dominant features when viewed by others with supernatural eyesight. Not only did Naruto instantly scrutinize the fact that he is the leader of the group but also discerned the vampire's somewhat slight hesitation to kill humans. As soon as they noticed Naruto, the newborn vampires attacked without hesitation as they thought him as another easy meal. The shinobi then proceeded to efficiently dispatch them all in a split-second save for the leader, who is now a Westrican, for he never encountered any creature, let alone a human being, able to do that. "Say, what's your name, soldier?" Naruto said. "Jasper Whitlock," the vampire responded. Naruto found him quite amusing, similar to when he first met Carlyle. To Jasper's surprise, Naruto did not only spare his life that night but also offered him another option to live. He found this difficult to believe and it confounded him. He retreated back to his coven and never told anyone what happened that night. Naruto has lived a peaceful and blissful life in that sleepy town, but alas, it's time to move on. Less than pleasant gossips and rumors about him are quickly spreading, and the superstitious townsfolk has made themselves scarce in his presence, for they have scrutinized some truth from the malicious whispers, such as the fact that he didn't look a day older since he first set foot on Pleasanton, more than a decade ago. He decided to sell his estate and move north, but before he left, he cast a powerful genjutsu on the townspeople that made them believe that nothing is amiss. He then heard stories of Quileute shapeshifters that can transform into wolves at will, so he went in search of them but ended up slightly disappointed after he found out that the transformation process is some sort of defensive response. This means that their lycanthrope shifting ability could only be initialized by having a vampire present to trigger it on a genetic level, but for generations such creatures has not been seen, and the last remaining Quileute elder who have the power to transform is on his deathbed. Interestingly, he found out that once activated they can consciously control their shifting and are aware of their actions while in wolf form, unlike werewolves who can only transform at the phase of the full moon and on the process loses their self-awareness in lieu of bloodthirsty feral rage. Another 26 years swiftly passed, seemingly like a feather that has fallen from the wings of a soaring falcon. During this interim, Naruto has traveled all around the world and studied in the most respected universities and under the most preeminent intellectuals the sciences of archaeology, biology and genetics, a relatively new kind of discipline at the time, as well as the contemporary theories of evolution of that period. Though it is not in his character to seek answers in the academe, the wisdom and aspect of Hagoromo Otsutsuki embedded on the totality of his personality has discerned it necessary to further his search for answers. Unfortunately, things took a turn for the worst as his theory regarding the shapeshifter's transformation and the special abilities of some vampires has been unfounded. He discovered that these gifts are wrought through evolutionary mutations or may be entirely supernatural in some cases but has no connection to Kekkei Genkei nor chakra, thus ruling out the possibility that they are descendants of survivors from the elemental nations. This had depressed and disheartened the shinobi so much and was about to give up on his hopes when he encountered an old friend on one of his travels to Washington. It was Carlyle. They haven't seen each other for roughly 60 years now. To Naruto's surprise, Carlyle has some company with him. He introduced the shinobi to Esme, Edward, Rosalie and Emmett. It would seem that all this time he found himself a new family. Interestingly, Jasper, the vampire he encountered and decided to spare in the past, is now a member of Carlyle's coven along with his mate, Alice. Jasper was equally surprised seeing the shinobi again and knowing that he and Carlyle knew each other. Naruto was then further flabbergasted when Carlyle suddenly invited him to be a member of his family, which he graciously accepted. Though, he found it a little bit amusing to pose as Carlyle's adopted son due to the fact that he is technically thousands of years older than him. Naruto Cullen, huh? I don't know. It sounds a little weird, yeah. No, Naruto hummed with a stoic face. Well, we could always go with any name you see fit, old friend, Carlyle chuckled. Naruto Uzumaki. I want to use the name my parents gave me to honor the legacy of the elemental nations and so that it would always remind me of my heritage and my quest. Naruto exclaimed with the will of fire burning in his eyes. It's settled then. Welcome to the family, Naruto Uzumaki. Carlyle said with a gentle smile. The shinobi felt elated and his depression was partially appeased from the unexpected serendipity, It reminded him of the nostalgic bliss of having friends and family once more. Time has continued to flow like a stream and everyone and everything around has aged and withered save for the immortals who remained unchanged and unspoiled by its touch. The Cullens made their abode in Alaska for quite a while, alongside with a coven of kindred vegetarian vampires, the Denali Coven. Due to the similarities in diet and philosophy, they coexisted peacefully and became great friends and allies to the point that they even considered themselves an extended family of one another. However, due to these parallels and along with their combined numbers, they began to attract the attention of other vampires, the most dangerous ones in particular. The Volturi has become increasingly suspicious of the potential threat they may pose and has issued their concern with a subtle but stern warning. The only thing preventing the predominant coven from swiftly taking action is the healthy fear they developed from witnessing Naruto dispose several of their guards with ease years ago, and his warning that they will suffer the same fate if they ever crossed his path. The Cullens nonetheless decided to move back to Forks in order to avoid further conflict. They knew that Ephraim and the rest of his pack are long dead when they moved back. Though, they still chose to honor the treaty they made in the past and stayed away from Quileute lands. Washington 2010. It was drizzling when Bella landed on Port Angeles. The rather gloomy weather gave her a creeping nostalgia of bright warm Arizona but has already come to terms and said her goodbyes to the sun when she decided to move. She saw Charlie, still in uniform, waiting for her as she got off the plane. He must have just left work. Bella thought. In the Olympic Peninsula of the state of Washington, under a near-constant cover of clouds and rain, there is a small town named Forks, population 3,120 people. Here is where she's moving. The drive was fairly lengthy and there was an uncomfortable silence between them. Bella's eyes were animate, observing the pristine and unspoiled green environment of his new home, but her sight never dared venture to the driver's seat where Charlie is gawkily thinking of a good topic to start a conversation with his daughter. Your hair got longer, Charlie said, finally breaking the awkward silence. I've cut it since last you saw me, Bella responded. Well, I guess it grew out again, Charlie said, gawking as he continued to drive. Finally they've arrived. Bella got off from the car. It was freezing, but nonetheless she took a moment to gaze at a familiar sight. Charlie's house hadn't changed at all. It will be her new home. She remembered that she used to spend 2 weeks there almost every summer, but it has been years. She turned back to Charlie, who was having a little trouble unloading her suitcase from the car, but finally managed to before she could help him. As Bella entered her room, the first thing she saw was the purple bed cover. Charlie seemed to notice her daughter's distraction as she stared quite peculiarly on the plum-colored linens. The sales lady picked the bed stuff. You like purple, right? Charlie asked, rather uncomfortably. Purple's cool. Thanks, Dad, Bella replied. That gave Charlie much relief as he made his way downstairs. One of the best things about Charlie is that he doesn't hover and respected her daughter's privacy. Bella, being used to her mother's eccentric perceptiveness, saw this as a refreshing novelty. Even though they hardly talk, the two know for a fact that they care deeply for each other. Bella sat down on her bed thinking of the life she left in Arizona for Forks. As nostalgia and glum began to trickle in, she felt a longing for the dry air and warm sunlight she was accustomed to. Suddenly she heard noises and a car blowing its horn outside. Looks like they have some visitors. She saw a middle-aged man in a wheelchair wearing a hat and was being pushed up the drive by a good-looking boy just a couple of years younger than she is. The latter had long glossy black hair, russet skin and dark eyes that set deep above the high planes of his cheekbones. Though, he still had just a hint of childish roundness left around his chin. Bella, you remember Billy Black? Charlie introduced her to the man in the wheelchair. Yeah, you're looking good, Bella replied with a smile as she shook the hands of Billy. Well, I'm still dancing. I am glad you're finally here. Charlie here hasn't shut up about it since you told him you're coming, Billy wittily said. That made Charlie a bit embarrassed about it. Alright, keep exaggerating. I'll roll you into the mud, Charlie shrugged. After I ram you into the ankle, Billy bombastically replied. That made the two grown men play around boisterously in a mock fight. The boy laughed at the two, then turned her attention to Bella. Hi, I'm Jacob. We used to make mud pies when we're little, the boy said with a friendly smile as he introduced himself. Right, I remember, Bella replied with a half smile. Are they always like this? She then inquired, looking at both Billy and Charlie jauntily roughhousing like immature boys. It's getting worse with old age, Jacob said. That made both of them laugh. So, what do you think? Charlie said as he walked towards them. What? Bella queried, confused. Your homecoming present, Charlie responded while leaning on a red truck that has been parked in the drive. This. Bella replied astonished. Her eyes sparkled with joy like that of a little girl. Just bought it from Billy here, Charlie said. Yep, Billy seconded. I totally rebuilt the engine for you, Jacob supplied. Oh my gosh, this is perfect. Bella was more than delighted and has a big smile on her face. She was quite excited and decided to take her new ride for a test run. It would seem that the sunless day has just lightened up and everything at that point was perfect, save for Jacob's right knee who Bella accidentally hit with the door when she got on the truck. I told you she'll love it. I'm down with the kids, Billy said with a teen-like swagger. Oh yeah dude. You're the bomb, Charlie retorted with a deadpan face and in a sarcastic tone. Okay, listen. You got to double pump the clutch when you shift, but besides that, you should be good, Jacob enthusiastically instructed Bella with the subtle complexities of her new machine. That's this one. Yeah, right there. Alright, so do you want a ride to school or something? Bella offered in a hopeful tone. Oh, I go to school on the reservation, Jacob said. He felt sorry after seeing her face reformed from extremely happy to a little blue. Right, that's too bad. It would have been nice to know one person, Bella said in a gloomy tone, her face emanating a trace of slight frustration. It was raining. The landscape was littered with the bodies of slain shinobi. Their blood mixed with the rainwater that cascaded from the mountains like a river, painting the landscape in bright gushing crimson. They've all sacrificed their lives to give Naruto and Sasuke enough time to seal the rampaging Jubi. Kirin. Sasuke yelled activating the jutsu. Thunder crackled from the storm clouds above as an immense dragon made of lightning formed. He then guided it to its target, engulfing the 10 tails in a bright thunderous flash. Sage Art. Lava Release Rasenshuriken. Naruto and innumerable of his shadow clones synergized their attack with Sasuke, creating hundreds of dilating vortexes of lightning-enhanced infernal cyclones that would vaporize an entire city in a blink of an eye. It was a spectacular sight. Their combined jutsus shattered half of the mountain range the size of Manhattan and reduced to dust anything within ground zero, creating a multi-mile-wide smoldering crater. The beast, however, appears relatively unharmed as it emerged still crackling with arcs of lightning and molten rock dripping from its unscathed hide. Now, both of the shinobi roared as they fold their hands into seals and simultaneously slammed their palms into the beast that activated an extremely powerful fuinjutsu which would seal it forever. The Jubi screeched as the sealing formula spread all over its body and began to enclose and confine the mighty beast. It's over. Sasuke coldly said, but was cut short when he felt a sharp pain on his chest. The Jubi has traded a final parting shot. One of its tails has pierced his back all the way through his chest like a spear, impaling the Uchiha. Naruto, Sasuke barely muttered in a weary voice. Blood gushed from his mouth as he collapsed to the ground, the life in his eyes slowly faded and he ceased to be. Though, he died with a smile on his face knowing that he honorably fought side by side, until the very end with whom he considered to be the nearest thing he had to a best friend. Naruto was paralyzed with overwhelming grief. Unable to say nor do anything, tears fell from his azure eyes as he saw his childhood friend lay cold in the dirt and shattered rocks. Sasuke's blood dripped from his wounds into the hidden leaf crest of the now misshapen forehead protector that he had secretly kept and always carried with him since he defected from Konoha. Naruto then let out a cry of pure and undiluted anguish that echoed and reverberated into the nearby rock formations like a requiem of melancholy. He stared into the heavens asking for answers. Why? Is the only word he was able to mutter. His glum musing was suddenly distracted by a radiating colossal ball of energy. The ceiling has been all but completed, all it needs is a container to be the Jubi's Jinchuriki. The fuinjutsu then latched itself to Naruto due in part from being its caster and the fact that he was the only living being left in the vicinity. The process was profoundly excruciating, like being cut and burned by tens of thousands of red-hot knives at the same time. The agonizing ordeal, coupled with the weariness of battle, has made Naruto black out and lose consciousness. But before the light completely left his eyes, he saw a surreal figure perched on a nearby precipice as if it was spectating the events unfold with amusement and curiosity. It has diaphanous wings made from streams of light that fluttered into the air and is engulfed by a cloak of fiery energy that seemed to make the strange creature shimmer like a quivering bowstring. It's all that he could remember before darkness overtook him in its pitch-black embrace. Naruto's eyes snapped open and found himself in his room. He hadn't had that dream for a long time now. Thousands of years have passed but the pain still felt like it has just been freshly inflicted. He got off from his bed and brooded in a corner for what seemed to be an eternity. Suddenly, a phantasmagoria of the bustling streets of Konoha flashed in his mind. He vividly recalled that one particular day at Ramen Ichiraku. It was a fairly sunny day, they've just returned from the land of spring after completing a rather extraordinary mission. Tuki and Ayame was busy tending with more customers than usual, and the streets were filled with clamor and tumult from the outside parties for the people was celebrating the Hanami festival. He remembered Kakashi-sensei, Sakura, Sasuke and himself slurping ramen and recounting the funny encounters they had from the said assignment. He remembered how happy they were that day, even the aloof and stoic Uchiha occasionally let out a half-suppressed chortle. It was nothing short of pure bliss. But everything has to come to an end. He felt a nostalgic dejection as he remembered when they bid their farewells to each other to retire for the day. He remembered seeing his sensei and friends go and part ways, walking further and further until he can no longer see their silhouettes, while he was left alone in a crossroad from which he can never follow them. What would he not give to relive even just a single hour of that day? But what's gone is gone and cannot be brought back. The truth is painful, it always is. Finally, he regained his senses back. Brushing off his melancholy, Naruto stood up and composed himself. Maybe in time, the truth of what happened to my people will be revealed, and if what I saw that day isn't just a figment of my imagination, I will find out, Naruto mused in a hollow voice as he gazed at the star-riddled sky from the window of his room. Forks High School, the next day. A faded red 1963 Chevy pickup truck pulled over and parked itself on the school's parking lot, but as soon as it stopped, the vehicle backfired, producing a loud popping noise and a puff of black smoke, earning the condescending stares and unkind mocking grin of some students who perceived it to be nothing more than an eyesore. Bella got off the truck. She decided to ignore the rustling whispers and just set about her business, evading as much attention as possible. She headed to the reception where she was entertained by Ms. Cope, a gentle plump woman with short gray hair and visible laugh lines on her face. She handed Bella a list of her class schedules, along with a map of the school and slips for the teachers to sign. As she walked past the corridors, on her way to her first period, a young man of Asian descent approached her. He was a cheerful guy and somewhat a bit geeky, Bella thought. He was wearing a dark blue shirt and tie, giving him a semi-corporate look. "You're Isabella Swan, the new girl. Hi. I'm Eric, the eyes and ears of this place." Eric introduced himself in friendly and merry manner. Anything you need. Tour guide, lunch date, shoulder to cry on. The overly helpful young man continued. "I'm really kind of the more sufferer in silence type." Bella replied, cordially and with a vague smile. "Good headline for your feature. I'm on the paper, and your news baby, front page." Eric said ecstatically and with a big smile on his face. "No, I'm not. You, please don't have any sort of," Bella awkwardly and stutteringly mumbled in surprise. "Chillax. No feature," Eric said in a lay before Bella was able to finish her incoherent objection. "Okay, thanks," Bella said, more than relieved. "Cool?" Eric inquired to make sure that any awkwardness between them has been dispelled. Bella's attention was suddenly diverted when she saw a handsome blonde youth. It was Naruto. His unruly and spiky blonde hair was like the intense golden rays of a winter sunrise. He sports a richly tanned skin, which was something of an attractive novelty for her. He also had whisker marks on his face that only sharpened his striking good looks. Though, he seemed to be pensive that day, as if indeed thought of something profound and prodigious. Ignoring the pleasantries and niceties of the flushed young women who hovered around him like flies, he continued to stride until he walked past Bella and Eric. "Who's he?" Bella involuntarily muttered loud enough for Eric to hear her. "Oh, him. That's Naruto," he replied with just enough tremble in his voice to conceal his dejection and trepidation as he beheld the stiff competition. Gym class. There was a rustle of activity and chattering inside the gym from the myriad of girls playing volleyball and boys playing basketball contra parallel to each other. Bella grunts in awkwardness, for she's not a big fan of volleyball, or any sport for that matter. She was also worried that her God-given clumsiness may hurt or outright kill someone before the period is over. "Get it! Get it! Get it!" a girl ecstatically said to her teammates as the ball lobed through their court. Another girl swiftly spiked it up and through the net of the opposing team's side, but was blocked and deflected yet again to theirs. "To you!" one of the girls cried out as she reckoned that the ball's trajectory was heading to Bella's direction. Stumped, Bella deflected the ball with a gawking slap and it flew out of control. "Whoa!" bellowed by a flummoxed boy who got hit at the back of his head by the stray volleyball. Bella rushed to him and apologized. "I'm sorry. I told them not to let me play. No way. No, no, no. That's. Don't. You're Isabella, right? The boy said intermittently with a smile on his face as he was further staggered with what he thought to be a fortunate happenstance. Just Bella, she corrected. She found him to be altogether good-looking but not her type. He has blonde hair and pale blue eyes that perfectly accented his baby face. Yeah. Hey, I'm Mike Newton. He cheerfully introduced himself in a friendly manner as he extended his arms to Bella. Nice to meet you, Bella said, reciprocating his gesture of friendship by shaking his hands. She got a great spike right. They were suddenly interrupted by a petite, outgoing girl with straight dark brown hair and blue eyes. Yeah, it's, Mike chuckled, holding the back of his head. I'm Jessica, by the way. Hey, you're from Arizona, right? She introduced herself, followed by an inquiry. Yeah, Bella responded. Aren't people from Arizona supposed to be, like, really tan? Jessica further queried. Yeah, maybe that's why they kicked me out. Bella awkwardly mumbled in a rather quipping response that made Mike and Jessica chuckle on her reply. You're good, Mike said as he found her statement genuinely amusing. That's so funny. Jessica further supplemented but with a rather forced and artificial giggle. School cafeteria. Like a masterpiece, you know, we'll have, like, this crazy pyramid fall from the sky, and then you guys can. Eric was talking to someone when he saw Mike being overly helpful and uncharacteristically chivalrous. It's my pleasure, madam, Mike said as he pulled a seat for Bella. Burrito my friend, he then offered to the latter. You guys can give each other high fives, Eric said quickly concluding his current conversation to stave off Mike from being too friendly. Hey, Mikey. You met my home girl, Bella. Hey. Oh, your home girl. Mike responded with a smile. But underneath that smile is a subliminal message telling Eric the word, mine. Yeah, Eric responded jovially. Subliminally projecting to Mike his own message, I saw her first. Back off dude. Yeah, Mike echoed as if he was telepathically telling Eric, I don't care. You back off. Though, the conversation was superficially friendly and pleasant, Mike and Eric subtly locked their eyes like a lion and a tiger trying to intimidate each other into submission. Out of the blue, Tyler kissed Bella's cheek, exclaiming, that's my girl. Then he pulled Mike's chair causing the latter to stumble on the floor and chase him in exasperation. Making most of the people who saw the spectacle laugh in amusement, others felt a little jealous of Bella. Sorry to mess your game Mike, Tyler childishly said as he was being chased by Mike. Oh, my god. It's like first grade all over again. You're the shiny new toy, Jessica said. She wished that she was the epicenter of all this attention. But before Bella could reply she saw Angela with a camera aimed at her. Smile, the latter said, followed by a flash. Okay, Bella uncomfortably muttered, overwhelmed from all the unwanted attention. Sorry. I needed a candid for the feature, Angela then said. The feature's dead, Angela. Don't bring it up again, Eric chided quite harshly. It's okay, Bella said, trying to defuse the situation but was cut off. I got your back, baby, Eric said while tapping her shoulder, as if to comfort her and project the impression of a protector. I guess we'll just run another editorial on teen drinking, Angela said in a somber voice. You know you can always go for eating disorders, a statement that made Jessica pause and hesitated to swallow another bite, or speedo padding on the swim team, Bella said, trying to comfort Angela, who was visibly hurt by Eric's reprimand. Actually that's a good one, Angela lightened up, her eyes exponentially filled with optimism. That's exactly what I thought. Kirk, right, Jessica supplied. We're talking Olympic size. There's no way, he's so skinny it doesn't make sense, Jessica said as she described the anatomical paradox. Totally, Angela concurred. Yeah. As both girls giggled, Bella glanced at her shoulder and saw 6 inhumanly beautiful people entered the cafeteria. They were so graceful that it seemed like they're floating. Of the 4 were boys. One was big, muscled like a serious weightlifter and has curly dark hair. Another was taller, leaner but still muscular and honey blonde. The third is the golden-haired boy he saw earlier that day, and the last was lanky, less bulky with untidy bronze-colored hair. He was more boyish than the others save for the third. The girls with them are opposites. The tall girl has a long golden hair waving gently behind her back. She has a statuesque physique that made most other girls' self-esteem recede in her presence. The second girl was pixie-like. Her hair was a deep black, cropped short and pointing in every direction. Who are they? Bella inquired curiously. They're Dr. and Mrs. Cullen's foster kids. They moved down here from Alaska, like, a few years ago. Jessica said in response to her inquiry. They kinda keep to themselves, Angela further added. Yeah, 'cause they're all together, like together. Jessica said under her breath. The blonde girl, that's Rosalie, and the big dark-haired guy, Emmett. They're like a thing. I'm not even sure that's legal. Jess, they're not actually related, Angela said. Yeah, but they live together. It's weird. Jessica defended her statement. Okay, the little dark-haired girl, she's Alice. She's really weird. And she's with Jasper, the blonde one who looks like he's in pain. Dr. Cullen is like this foster dad, / matchmaker. She further continued. Maybe he'll adopt me, Angela said in a dreamy voice. And them? Bella further queried to point out the other two boys. That's Edward, totally gorgeous obviously, but apparently none of the girls here are good enough for him. Like I care, you know. She laughed awkwardly, then snatched a glance at Edward, who seemed laughing at something, belying her last statement. So, yeah, seriously though, don't waste your time, she told Bella. I wasn't planning on it, Bella responded. Edward then glanced at Bella. His face was riddled with an uncanny expression, like that of an unmet expectation. Oh, and the cute blonde guy with him is Naruto. Weird name, right? He's a total hottie though, and so far the most approachable and outgoing of them. But apparently he's not in a very good mood today. Maybe all he need is a girlfriend, Angela again said in a dreamy voice, though, this time she was more like supplicating to everything that is holy to be that girl. You wish, Jessica playfully heckled, that made both girls giggle like mischievous fairies. What's your problem now? Rosalie scoffed at Naruto. They only talk to each other when they absolutely have to, and whenever they do the conversation is usually fleeting and snappy. Although it may appear that she's not very fond of the shinobi, and him to her, the truth is they do care deeply for one another's well-being like real siblings. Geez, what's it to you Goldilocks? Naruto retorted sarcastically, don't you and Papa Bear over there have some smooching appointment? He then continued. It made Emmett chuckle like an amused boy, but was immediately chastised by Rosalie's piercing stare. Naruto was well aware that she's just looking out for him, and this is his way of saying that he's fine and there's nothing to worry about. It's that dream again, isn't it? Jasper inquired. Though, he was certain that it is indeed the cause of the shinobi's wistfulness. Yeah. How did you find out? Naruto asked back. We all heard you crying like a little bitch last night, Rosalie said, seizing the perfect opportunity for a riposte. Whatever, Naruto crossed his arm and pouted. But yeah, it was that dream. The last time I had it was back when Elvis died in the crapper. He was a big fan of Elvis, don't ask why, and he took it quite hard when the king shuffled off his mortal coil while on the throne. For them this is the closest thing to a leisurely conversation, and it assuaged their minds from the transitorily unbearable clasp of a mortal existence. It reminded them of the happiest and joy-filled hours they had in an ocean of misery and melancholy, back when they still live a mortal life. Everything all right there, Edward? Naruto diverged. I can't read her thought, Edward sighed as he gazed at Bella with a bemused expression on his face. Is that so? Naruto said with curiosity. He then used his more potent chakra-induced telepathy to peer into Bella's mind, but he was unable to breach deep enough into her psyche and was only able to read superficial and random thoughts. Interesting, he exclaimed with a light of enthusiasm and hope in his eyes. In a perpetually stormy and constantly shifting nebula-like dimensional plane outside of reality, there stood two beings sternly glaring at each other, perusing the slightest weakness of one another to gain the upper hand in what seemed to be a philosophical debate. One of which was Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of six paths, and the other was a rather strange and eldritch being. He looked like a solid black silhouette of a youth riddled with iridescent starry-like spots akin to that of a cloudless night sky, and was engulfed in a fiery aura of white energy. The entity then spoke in an eerie, echoing and cold voice. The deviations engendered by your intrusion had thrown the natural order into imbalance that has taken thousands of years of subtle manipulation to rectify. He said in reference to chakra. The core teachings of Ninshu were meant to connect the spiritual energies of every living being, uniting nations into a single people that is able to understand each other without communication and thereby giving them better understanding of themselves, as well as of others. The sage replied in a calm voice, in defense of his philosophy. Is it really, indeed? I think not, old man, the entity said. Hagoromo could have sworn that he saw an ephemeral demonic grin on the former's shadowy and featureless face. I can see that your senility is only superseded by your arrogance. Old man. To my understanding you're far more ancient than I am, The sage riposted with a vague smile before his face turned austere again. Why do you despise humans so much? He then inquired in a serious tone. On the contrary, I find humans quite interesting, even though they are a worthless greedy lot. The entity replied. Is that why you destroyed the elemental nations? I have my reasons. How your mind works baffles me. What kind of reason there is to kill millions of innocent people? Do you see yourself and your kind too mighty and superior to indifferently ignore the lives of those lower than you and step on them and crush them like insects on the heels of your feet? Do you not have a conscience nor a concept of what's right or wrong? The sage firmly retorted in a serious tone, gripping his staff rather tightly. I am beyond duality. I can do no wrong, for I don't know what it is. The entity tranquilly spoke once again in the same eerie and echoing voice, shocking the sage from the revelation of the dark god. What fascinations there are in this planet. Strange mortals with curious customs. But alas, their lives are fragile and fleeting like falling autumn leaves. And in their paltry, unfortunate existence they desired things, concepts and powers that are not theirs nor could they hope to comprehend. Day and night they endlessly supplicated the heavens for equality. To be as wealthy as their neighbor, as powerful as the Lord they serve, to have the means to avenge their ill fates. So you decided silence them forever. Hagoromo said in a contemptuous hollow voice. I granted their egalitarian wish and longing, noble and common, rich and poor, young and old, all are equal in death, the deity said indifferently as he slowly faded and vanished into nothingness. He has strange notions of kindness. But he was made so and does not know any better. His ways are indeed peculiar from a mortal's point of view. Hagoromo pondered mirthlessly from the yet again disturbing revelation. Naruto, I leave everything to you now, my son, the sage said with a tiny spark of hope in his heart as he was left alone in that otherworldly dimensional prison. Port Angeles. A ramen bar recently opened in Port Angeles and Naruto was ecstatic for it's the only one in town. He quickly made a shadow clone to be his replacement in school and harassed himself to Washington Street, where it was located. His face lit up with joy as he ingressed and beheld the glorious magnificence of the establishment. One miso ramen with extra katsudon please. Naruto enthusiastically ordered. The chef gladly complied and assembled the ramen. Judiciously preparing the noodles and flawlessly merging it with the hearty miso broth like he was uniting yin and yang with immaculate artistry. He then added the toppings with a gentle and artful precision, scallions, nori, menma, halved onsen tamago, and the crowning piece, a perfectly golden sliced katsudon which made Naruto drool, and the shinobi drooled some more when the masterfully completed dish was served in front of him. It's so beautiful. Naruto tearfully said as he inhaled deeply, savoring its aroma, which was heavenly. His senses run amok with the first slurp, his neurons fired wildly from the delectable euphoria that his taste buds were basking on. Oh ramen, where have you been all my life? Naruto thought in blissful exaltation as he continued to slurp and gulp. It didn't take long for him to finish the fairly large bowl and ordered for seconds. You sure love ramen. A gentle voice said that he thought was familiar. The image of Hinata Hyuga flashed on his mind. He knew that Hinata was long gone but for some peculiar reason he felt her presence as if she's just next to him. Naruto turned his gaze to the voice's origin and saw a young woman giving him a half smile. She has perfect copper skin and attractive long eyelashes that perfectly complemented her exotic beauty. You come here often, miss, he said, leaving the sentence unfinished as if silently asking for the young woman's name. But before she could formally introduce herself, a guy with long black hair and a serious face that Naruto easily identified as a member of the Quilyu tribe suddenly grabbed her arms. Leah, let's go, the man said as he glared darkly at the shinobi before the two stormed out. Sam, what's wrong with you? She inquired quite irate, confounded by his behavior. Don't you know who that guy is? Sam Yuli said in a grim and harsh tone. No. You pulled me away before he could introduce himself. Which, by the way, you have nothing to be jealous about. Leah said sarcastically, trying to diffuse what she thought to be Sam's unfounded jealousy. He's with the Cullens, Sam said in a whisper-like but stern voice as his eyes narrowed. A cold one. But that's impossible, I actually saw him eat food. Leah stutteringly said in bewilderment. He's the most dangerous of them. Look, just promise me you won't have anything to do with that, whatever he is. Sam chided, harsher and more serious than before with blazing eyes that compelled her to comply. Unknown to them, a cloaked shadow clone surreptitiously eavesdropped on their conversation. It then dispelled and relayed the information it learned to Naruto. He conjured the clone just before the two left the premises to ensure that Leah would be fine. He was both captivated and perplexed by the nostalgic and strangely difficult to comprehend sentiment that she has evoked in him. Biology class. Bella entered the classroom accompanied by Angela. Next to the center aisle, she recognized Edward by his unusual hair. As she walked to the teacher, Mr. Molina, to introduce herself and have her slip signed, the fan blew behind her. For some reason Edward went rigid on his seat. He looked appalled and clutched his hand firmly on his nose like he just caught a lungful of the most putrid and reviling stench the collective cesspools of the planet was able to brew. And as if things couldn't go any worse, Mr. Molina assigned Bella to sit right next to the grimmest young man. She was bewildered and perplexed by the antagonistic glare that he was giving her. Edward didn't look up as Bella set her things on the table and took her seat, though, the latter saw his posture change from the corner of her eye. He was leaning away from her, sitting on the extreme edge of his chair as if the offensive reek that assaulted him earlier just got more overpowering. Inconspicuously, Bella sniffed her hair. It smelled like strawberries, the smell of her favorite shampoo. Bella let her hair fall on her shoulder, making a dark curtain between them. She tried to pay more attention to the teacher. Unfortunately, the lecture was about cellular anatomy, something she already tackled in her old high school, back in Arizona. Nonetheless, she took notes diligently, always looking down. Oddly, she couldn't help but peek occasionally at the strange boy next to her. During the entirety of the class he seemed to be in pain and never relaxed his stiff position on the edge of his chair, sitting as far as possible. Both of them felt that the particular class appeared to drag longer than the others and the discomfort it elicited seemed like sighting on hot cinders. Bella peeked one more time at Edward and regretted it. His charcoal black eyes were glaring at her, full of revulsion. If looks could kill, Bella thought, uncomfortably. As the bell ranged, Edward rose fluidly and was out the door before anyone else was out of their seat. Bella sat frozen, staring blankly after him. She was puzzled and felt ire. She then slowly gathered her things, blocking the anger that filled her, fearing that her eyes would tear up. For some reason her temper was hardwired to her tear ducts and she usually cries when she's angry, with humiliating and less than pleasant tendency. Dash dot 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 dash. Later that day, as Bella walked into the office to hand over the signed slips back to Miss Cope, she saw someone that almost made her turn around and walk back out. It was Edward Cullen. He stood at the desk and apparently didn't notice her come in. He was arguing with the receptionist to trade his biology for another class of any other time. There must be something else. Physics, biochem. Edward said in a low, attractive voice. I'm sorry but every class is full, Ms. Cope explained to Edward. Just a minute dear, she then said as she saw Bella enter the office. Turning her attention back to Edward, she continued, I'm afraid you have to stay in biology. All right, I just have to endure it, Edward said, then hastily walked out the door without looking at Bella. Bella meekly approached the receptionist's desk and handed her the signed slips. How did your first day go, dear? Ms. Cope asked maternally. Fine, Bella replied in a timid voice. It was a lie, and it's either she not a very good liar or Miss Cope is just sharply perceptive, for the latter didn't look too convinced. Carver Cafe. Whenever Bella isn't cooking, Charlie and she goes to the particular diner for their meal. I can't believe how much you've grown. And so gorgeous, said Cora, while she's serving Bella a plate of fries and garden burger. She's Charlie's friend and works there as a waitress. Suddenly, a tall, middle-aged and balding man walked over. Hey Bella. You remember me? He said keenly. Bella peered at the man with a bemused face and cordially beamed at him a vague smile. He looked familiar but she can't particularly recognize him. I played Santa one year, the man said with much enthusiasm. Yeah, Waylon. She did not have a Christmas here since she was 4, Charlie reminded the man. I bet I made an impression of it, didn't I? Waylon said, hopeful that he indeed made an impression. You always do. Charlie wittily replied. But crack Santa, Cora remarked that made them all smirk. Hey, kids love those little bottles though. Waylon said, referring to the tiny bottles he handed as Christmas gifts to children whenever he plays Santa Claus every year. Alright, let the girl eat her garden burger, Waylon. Cora said as he genially dismissed him. As soon as you're done I will bring you your favorite berry cobbler, remember? Your dad still has it, every Thursday. Thank you. It would be great, Bella said, extending her appreciation to the nice lady. Dash dot 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 dash. It wasn't raining the next day, but the clouds were thick and opaque. Bella stood at the school's parking lot, waiting for Edward. She decided to confront him and demand to know what his problem was. But he never showed. The day after that, another no-show. More days passed and Bella can't help but feel a nagging suspicion that he wasn't there because of her. It's ridiculous and egotistical to think that I can affect someone that strongly. It's impossible, Bella thought, trying to convince herself repeatedly, but at the back of her head she couldn't stop worrying that it is true. The week passed uneventful and Bella's first weekend at Forks went without incident. Then comes Monday. As Bella was walking down the driveway of their house towards her truck, she accidentally slipped from the slippery frozen concrete and landed on her bottom, prompting Charlie to rush over and help her stand. You alright? Charlie inquired as he helped her daughter stand. Yeah, I'm good. Ice doesn't really help being coordinated, Bella replied. Yeah, that's why I had new tires put on the truck. Old ones are getting pretty bald, he said, inspecting the new tires, slightly kicking one just to make sure. Well, I would probably be late for dinner. I gotta head down to Mason County. Security guard at the Grisham mill got killed by some kind of animal. An animal? Bella inquired, slightly bemused. You're not in Phoenix anymore, Bells. Anyway, I figured I'd lend a hand. Be careful. Always am. And thanks for the tires, Bella said, smiling. Yeah, Charlie responded before he got on his cruiser. Prom committee is a chick thing, but I gotta cover it for the paper anyway, and they need a guy to help choose the music, so I need your playlist. Hey, listen, I was wondering, did you have a date too? Eric chatted, accompanying Bella to biology class and was about to ask her to the prom when they were suddenly interrupted by Mike. What's up, Arizona? Huh, how you liking the rain, girl? Better get used to it, girl. Mike genially said, playfully flapping his rain-drenched hat atop of Bella in jest. Yeah, Mike, hey, you're real cute, man. Eric sarcastically said in frustration. Oh, I know, that was really awesome. Mike said in an innocent tone, pretending that he didn't purposely interrupted their conversation at the point where Eric was about to ask Bella to prom. Why you shooting down my game? Let a play. Eric continued, seeing past through Mike's stratagem. Yeah, okay. What you playing at, T-ball? Mike retorted, amused. As the two continued to bicker, Bella walked to her seat and saw Edward, who has decided to finally end his self-imposed exile and come back to school. His skin was less pale, the circles under his eyes are much less noticeable, and there was something more, Bella pondered, staring, trying to isolate the change. But she did so as cautiously as possible, out of fear of receiving one of his antagonistic glares yet again. There goes my good day, Bella thought as she sat next to him. She was flummoxed, however, when Edward spoke to her in a gentle voice. Hello, I'm sorry I hadn't had the chance to introduce myself last week. I'm Edward Cullen. You're Bella, he said in a serene and almost musical voice. Why, yes, Bella replied, still astonished from the unexpected surprise. She then heard Mr. Molina saying something and focused her attention to the teacher. Onion root tip cells, that's what's on your slides right now. Okay. So, separate and label them into the phases of mitosis, and the first partners that get it right are gonna win the golden onion. The teacher said, holding the prize that made the entire room rustle from the students' chattering and harmless catcalling. Ladies first, Edward slid the microscope to Bella. You were gone, Bella seized the perfect time for an inquiry. Yeah, I was out of town for a couple of days. Personal reasons. Edward awkwardly replied as Bella was peering on the microscope. He then finished his sentence with a rather nervous smirk. Prophase, Bella said with regards to the specimen she just viewed under the microscope. Do you mind if I look? Edward inquired in a gentle voice. It's prophase, he then said, concurring with Bella's earlier assessment. Like I said. So are you enjoying the rain? Edward saw Ed beaming, deviating the topic of conversation. Bella anxiously smirked. What? You're asking me about the weather? She said in response to the Victorian question. Yeah, I guess I am. Edward saw Ed with a confused expression on his face. Well, I don't really like the rain. Any cold, wet thing, I don't really. What? Bella said that made Edward smirk as if he found something amusing. What? Bella inquired, curious of his strange reaction. Nothing, Edward saw Ed with still traces of amusement in his voice. He then peered into the microscope. It's anaphase. You mind if I check? Sure. Anaphase, Bella echoed in agreement to Edward. Like I said, Edward implied with a smile that made Bella gently bit her lip. If you hate the cold and the rain so much, why'd you move to the wettest place in the continental US? He then asked the question out of curiosity. It's complicated, Bella replied. I'm sure I can keep up. My mom remarried, and Bella began in sad voice. She found it peculiarly difficult to word the thoughts she wanted to express. So you don't like the guy, or? Edward saw Ed, more than an assumption than a guess as he attempted to deduce the contents of her words. No, that's not. Phil's really nice, Bella responded. She stared at Edward's eyes to closely scrutinize that they indeed changed color from charcoal black to golden amber. It's metaphase. You want to check it? Edward then said after examining the third slide into the microscope. I believe you, Bella replied, mesmerized. Since they're the first pair to complete the task, Mr. Molina awarded them the golden onion. Even as the class ended, they found themselves still speaking to each other in the hallway. Edward was strangely chatty that day. He was genuinely curious about Bella. Usually, the vampire just telepathically read the information he wanted from anyone to obtain it. There are only two persons who are an exception. First was Naruto, who can shield his mind from him, and the second is Bella, who doesn't register any thought. Hey, did you get contacts? Bella finally inquired in curiosity with regards to the peculiar change of Edward's eye color. No. Your eyes were black the last time I saw you, and now they're, like, golden brown. Yeah, I know, it's the fluorescence. Edward struggled to fabricate a pretense as he was caught off guard by the question. He then decided to storm out, leaving Bella mystified. As Bella headed to his truck in the school's parking lot, she saw Edward standing near his shiny silver Volvo. He was talking to Naruto, or rather, the latter was telling him something interesting, but his attention was focused on her. Naruto seemed to notice Edward's distraction and gazed upon Bella's direction. To her surprise, the shinobi flashed a dazzling white friendly smile and waved at her. He's no less gorgeous than his sibling, she thought. She then saw Naruto said something to Edward that made the latter anxious. Bella didn't particularly caught what he said, but it would seem that the golden-haired boy is teasing his bronze-haired sibling. Dash dot 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 dash. You do realize that I couldn't really relate with that kind of topic, right? Edward saw Ed with a deadpan expression on his face. I know you have your special diet and all, but at least let me tell you the artistic principles of ramen. The shinobi said with fiery fervor, but noticed that Edward isn't really listening and was rather distracted, staring at someone. He instantly traced his line of sight and saw Bella. She's kinda cute. You have good taste in women, he said to him. I don't know what you're talking about, Edward saw Ed anxiously. Naruto then cheekily grinned. His face looked like that of a sly fox. So that's where you've been up to every time you leave the house this past few nights. You sneak into her room, didn't you? It's a little bit creepy if you ask me, but in this day and age, no. Shut up, Edward saw Ed under his breath. If it isn't for the fact that he's a vampire, he would have blushed red like a tomato from the embarrassment. Oh, don't be too modest, Edward. I can't quite believe it. Our little Eddie boy is now all grown up. I'm so proud, Naruto said in a fashion similar to how Esme speak. Alice giggled with amusement, and even the usually stoic and composed Jasper cannot help himself but laugh. And if the rest of the Cullens were only there, they would have a good chuckle from it too, save for Edward, of course, who at the moment looks kind of irritated. Stop talking, please. Thank you, Edward saw Ed, finally able to compose himself after being bombarded with embarrassing quips by his golden-haired foster brother. Okay, I'm sorry. I behaved immaturely and I apologize. Naruto said as he wiped the wisecracking tears of joy from his eye. Though, if you'll indulge me, I wanted to ask you a favor. He then said in a deathly serious tone, his face turned from jolly to grim. What? Edward inquired. His voice was partially quivering from uneasiness. The last time he saw Naruto that serious was back when he dispatched 4 Volturi guards so brutally that it made Arrow and Keys look away, trembling in fear. Give me 5, little pimp. Naruto cheekily said in a rather high-pitched voice, raising his right hand for a high five while laughing like an insane person that deeply annoyed Edward and left the vampire fuming in exasperation. Edward was about to walk out from the wisecracking blonde when he saw an out-of-control van about to crush Bella. There was no time to think about consequences, his instincts outpaced his ratiocinative faculties. Bella was startled when suddenly she heard a loud horn and saw a speeding dark blue van with Tyler in it. He tried to avoid a reversing car but his van went out of control and was sent screeching on a collision course with its side hitting Bella's truck, and she was standing amidst the 2 steel machines that was inexorably about to collide with one another. Bella's entire life flashed before her eyes but before she could close them out of fear, she felt that someone pushed her out of the way. She then heard the shattering crunch of the van folding around the truck bed and felt an overwhelming fear. Darkness overtook her. She seemed to pass out for a second from what she thought to be her demise. Curiously, as she slowly returned to her senses, she realized that Edward's left arm was around her waist and his right arm held out to stop the van, crushing its side. His hand left a noticeable dent on the van's door as the vehicle impacted it. Bella gazed at his rescuer and he looked back, their eyes locked for a moment but he quickly severed it and left casually like nothing happened. It was absolutely silent for one long second before the screaming began. In an abrupt bedlam, Bella could hear more than one person shouting her name as other students rushed to her aid. Dial 911, a girl frantically cried out. I already called. They're gonna send somebody over soon. A boy holding his phone exclaimed. Bella, I'm sorry. I panicked. Tyler apologized in earnest with a weak voice and seemingly about to pass out as he apparently received more injuries than her, with blood gushing from his forehead. Meanwhile, on the other side of the parking lot, Alice and Jasper watched with a hard expression on their faces from the stunt Edward just pulled. Rosalie is going to kill him, Alice mumbled. She could already see Rosalie's outraged reaction, coupled with some harsh scolding for what he did could elicit the wrath of the Volturi. Naruto, however, remained staid and calm. He then formed a seal of confrontation with his right hand and cast a wide area effect genjutsu that altered the perceptions of those who witnessed the accident. You did the right thing, he then said to Edward as he approached them back. As soon as Charlie was informed about the accident he immediately hopped to his cruiser and drove faster than he ever did in lifetime, breaking dozens of traffic rules and frantic. As he arrived at the hospital and at the emergency room he saw Tyler, whose head was wrapped in blood-stained bandages. His heart almost stopped, as he could only surmise the terrible injuries his daughter might have suffered. To his relief, Bella seemed to be fine and was apparently unharmed. Bella, you okay? Charlie said, deeply concerned. He then turned to Tyler with a straight face, you and I are gonna talk. I'm fine, Dad. Calm down. Bella responded, trying to defuse the situation. I'm sorry, Bella. I tried to stop. Tyler said, anxiously. I know. It's okay. Bella reassured him but the guilt in his face wasn't fully assuaged. No. It sure as hell is not okay. Charlie reprimanded in a stern tone that made Tyler look down and remorsefully contemplate his mistake. Dad, it wasn't his fault. You could have been killed. You understand that? Yes. But I wasn't, so. Charlie once again glared at Tyler, you can kiss your license goodbye. I heard the chief's daughter was here. Suddenly a doctor walked around the corner and Bella's mouth fell open. He was young, blonde and more handsome than any movie star she had ever seen. From Charlie's description, this has to be Edward's father. Drive Cullen, Charlie greeted, confirming Bella's speculation. Charlie, Carlisle greeted back, giving Charlie a friendly tap in the back. I've got this one, Jackie, Isabella. Carlisle said in a gentle voice as he took Bella's chart from the nurse. Bella, she corrected him. Well, Bella, looks like you took quite a spill. How do you feel? He then queried. Good, Bella responded. Look here. Carlisle said as he flashed a torch on each of Bella's eyes. You might experience some post-traumatic stress or disorientation, but your vitals look good. No signs of any head trauma. I think you'll be just fine. He then continued that made Charlie sigh in relief from hearing it. I'm so sorry, Bella. I'm really. Tyler muttered remorsefully but was cut off when Charlie abruptly closed the cubicle curtain between them, out of exasperation. You know, it would have been a whole lot worse if Edward wasn't there. He knocked me out of the way. Bella said as trickle by trickle her memory of the incident slowly came back. Edward. Your boy? Charlie inquired, looking at Carlisle. Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, he got to me so fast. He was nowhere near me. Bella answered his question for him. Sounds like you were very lucky. Carlisle responded in a rather anxious voice and vague smile. He was bewildered, for Bella remembered what happened quite clearly in spite of Naruto's genjutsu that was designed to erase her recollection of the accident and replace it with a fabricated memory. I got to go sign some paperwork. You should. You should probably call your mom, Charlie said in an awkward voice. Did you tell her? Bella asked, which Charlie responded with an awkward facial expression, implying that he has no choice but to tell Renee what happened. She's probably just freaking out, she then muttered. Bella pulled her phone and walked a few steps away from Charlie to make a phone call to her mother, who is probably delirious by now from the unpleasant news, when she saw Carlisle, Edward, Naruto and Rosalie talking to each other in a serious tone and in low and rustling voices. 15 kids that saw what happened. Rosalie said lividly. What was I supposed to do, then? Let her die. Edward responded in defense of her action. Don't worry about them. They saw what I wanted them to see. It's Bella I'm stumped about. I used an even stronger jutsu on her just to make sure, but she just shrugged it off in just less than an hour. Naruto said in a ponderous voice. This isn't just about you. It's about all of us. Rosalie scowled at Edward, ignoring Naruto's statement. I think we should take this in my office. Carlisle said as they saw Bella standing in a corner, 10 feet away from them. Can I talk to you for a minute? Bella awkwardly said to Edward. Naruto gave her a vague smile, while Rosalie scowled at her. Rosalie. Naruto. Carlisle gently said, evoking privacy for Edward and Bella. What? Edward asked, sounding annoyed and his jaws clenched. How did you get over to me so fast? Bella inquired. His unfriendliness intimidated her, prompting her words to come with less severity than she originally intended to. I was standing right next to you, Bella. No. You were next to your car, across the lot. No, I wasn't. Edward retorted indifferently, followed by a soft laugh that Bella felt like a mockery. Yes, you were. Bella pushed firmly. Bella, you hit your head. I think you're confused. Edward sighed in a cutting tone. I know what I saw. Bella's temper flared as she was staring defiantly at him. And what exactly was that? Edward snapped. You stopped the van. You pushed it away with your hand. Bella retorted. She realized how crazy it sounds that she couldn't continue. She was so mad that she could feel the tears coming and tried to force them back by grinding her teeth together. Well, nobody's gonna believe you, so. Edward responded. He was staring at her incredulously. His face was serious and defensive. I wasn't gonna tell anybody. I just need to know the truth. Can't you just thank me and get over it? Thank you. You're not gonna let this go, are you? No. Well, then I hope you enjoy disappointment. Edward sighed, scowling at her, and walked out. Biology field trip. I need everyone's permission slip, Mr. Molina said as tasked a student to collect them. Meanwhile, Bella was beside her truck. Her eyes wandered the entire parking lot, deeply contemplating if what she saw that day was indeed true or just a hallucination stimulated by trauma. Her gaze fell to the dent on his truck, then to Edward, who was walking along with Alice and Jasper. Hey, look at you, you're alive. Mike, who suddenly appeared in the background out of nowhere, said in a silly voice, trying to be cute. Yeah, I know, false alarm I guess, Bella said with a vague smile. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, if, you know, it's like a month away, but would you go to the prom with me? Mike said incoherently, with a nervous smile on his face, hoping that Bella would say yes. Bella wasn't really paying attention to him as her concentration was focused on Edward behind him, who for some reason looked amused at something. So what do you think? Mike said, that caught Bella's attention back. About what? Bella asked. You want to go to prom with me? Mike said with awkward intervals in his voice followed by nervous smirks on each lacunae, his pale blue eyes looking at her like a puppy dog. Oh, prom, dancing, not such a good idea for me. I have something on that weekend anyway. I am going to Jacksonville that weekend, Bella then said in a slow and measured voice, choosing her words carefully as not to offend him. Meanwhile, he caught a gaze on Edward, whose grin on his face just widened as if he heard every last bit of their conversation. You cannot go another weekend? Mike asked. A trace of melancholy was audible in his voice, but still hoping that Bella would be her date. Non-refundable ticket, Bella said that visibly saddened Mike but accepted her decision respectfully, nonetheless. She felt sorry for him. You should ask Jessica. I know she wants to go with you. She then said that made Mike try to smile. Hey guys. We got to go. We got to go. Green is what? Good. Let's go. Mr. Molina called them in a cheery and encouraging voice. You're so mean, Naruto, said to Edward, whose smile is now bigger than ever. What? It's funny. Edward replied, that made Naruto shook his head. Dash dot 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 dash. Greenhouse. Eggshells, carrot top. Compost is cool, Mr. Molina said. Apparently he enjoyed the tour a little bit too much than most of the students. Now, I am gonna make a steaming cup of compost tea, he said ecstatically, but was distraught when he saw Tyler and Mike took turns sipping it. What's in Jacksonville? Edward curiously asked Bella out of the blue. Bella was surprised by the question and a bit irritated at the thought that Edward was eavesdropping during her conversation with Mike. How did you know about that? Bella asked in a tone which sounded more like an implication than an inquiry. You didn't answer my question. Well, you didn't answer any of mine, so. You didn't even say hi to me. Hi, Edward cumbersomely said, that made Bella roll her eyes. Are you gonna tell me how you stopped the van? Yeah, I had an adrenaline rush. It's very common. You can Google it. Floridians, that's what in Jacksonville. Bella wittily said. She then nearly tripped but was caught by Edward. Would you at least watch where you walk? Edward saw it angrily, that made Bella walk away. Look, I'm sorry if I'm being rude all the time, it's just. I think it's the best way. He then said before she could traverse any further distance. Before she could reply, Jessica came and excitedly told the Bella on how Mike asked her to the prom. Edward, on the other hand, walked out swiftly and disappeared into the crowd of students in front of them. Biology class, the next day. Eric walked Bella to biology class as usual, constantly chatting to the latter in a genial manner as they stride, asking how's her day and if she's feeling much better since the accident. He also mentioned to Bella that Mr. Molina was out of town for an urgent business and a substitute teacher will have to fill in for a week. As Bella entered the room, she was surprised and a bit crestfallen when she saw Edward no longer sitting where he previously sat but decided to move a few rows behind. There was no question that he's now deliberately avoiding her. What is his problem? Bella thought. She was more irked than ever. She was puzzled and quite deep in her thoughts as to why Edward is acting in such a galling manner. She barely noticed the substitute teacher come in, nor did she pay particular attention to the lecture. Bella finally had enough and decided to confront him once and for all. She turned to Edward with a straight face, ready to demand an explanation. Suddenly all noise died out and time itself seemed to stop as the room was filled with an eerie silence. Bella turned from Edward as curiosity compelled her to peruse the sudden stillness, but her subsequent facial expression melded with the singular reaction of everyone in the room, the menagerie of flabbergasted girls whose jaws were completely agape, and even the teacher was blushing red as they saw an extremely handsome young man standing at the threshold of the classroom door. A single glance and he could well be mistaken for an A-lister male model. Wearing a simple but fashionable gray Challenger Henley, faded designer jeans and just slightly blue suede shoes. He is quite tall, standing at about 6 feet 2, apparently has a lean but well-built body. Has a medium length, glossy and slightly wavy golden brown hair that gives him a casual and groomed but undone look. He also sports a silky, flawless fair skin complexion and celestial facial aesthetics that could challenge and effortlessly subdue the definition of perfection. But his most distinguishing feature are those strikingly beautiful and mesmerizing iridescent electric blue eyes that somewhat look purple when viewed in the right light. Those pair of hypnotic orbs are so enthralling that gazing upon them feels like being removed from the mundane existence and be set adrift into a sea of astral splendor and soul-pacifying tranquility. Can I help you? The substitute teacher, a petite Latina-looking lady, broke the silence. I apologize for the intrusion, miss. I'm a new student. The nice lady from the office said I should give this to you and have it signed, the young man said politely with a pleasant voice and in a cultured accent while handing the slip to the teacher. Okay. Mr. Alexander Storm, I'm Ms. Rodriguez, your substitute biology teacher. By the way, can we just call you Alex? Alexander seems so archaic. The teacher said with a subtle hint of jest after reading the slip. Sure thing, the young man cheerfully replied. Okay then, Alex. Please help yourself to a vacant seat. Alex nodded before he sat down on an available seat that happens to be adjacent to Bella. The young man smiled in greeting to his flushed seatmate, which was reciprocated with a nod and vague smile before she awkwardly looked away. Though Bella can't help but glimpse at him every now and then. Every aspect of him is perfect, he's so beautiful. Bella thought. While Edward behind them was giving the young man a rather suspicious glare. Not because he felt jealousy of any kind, okay maybe a little, but the very presence of their new classmate is giving him an uncanny and chilling sensation. He tried to read him but quickly withdraw in painful regret. Unlike Bella's wall-like mind, which was quiet and doesn't register any thought, or Naruto who could block his more profound thoughts from being read, this guy has some sort of mental barrier Edward has never seen before. His mind is like a hazy labyrinth full of unfathomable and unseen perils that would easily claim and shatter the vampire's sanity if he would delve in too deep. Who is this guy? Edward thought. A definitely curious gift that warrants a more profound investigation for later. The bell rang and first period was over. School cafeteria. A few periods thereafter, the bell rang yet again in its lunch. The cafeteria was bustling with activity. Students eating and socializing with their friends, jocks bragging on how awesome their game was last season, girls churning out the latest gossip, and geeks talking about the myriad objects of their fancy. Alex walked in making more than a few heads turn. Pretty much your run-of-the-mill school cafeteria I suppose, he surmised as he assembled food in his tray. Hey Alex over here, yelled Eric who he met at Spanish class earlier. Jessica and Angela blushed as they saw the fine-looking young man approach their table. Eric my good man, what's up? Alex jovially greeted fist bumping with Eric. Yo, by the way this is Mike, Tyler, Jessica, Angela and new arrival is my home girl Isabella, Eric introduced his friends who Alex nodded at each. Just Bella, the pale young woman corrected as she placed her bag on a chair. So what brings you to Forks? Mike inquired while crunching on an apple. Well it's kind of complicated. You see I'm originally from Seattle then we moved to my father's estate in Cardiff when I was 10. When my parents passed away from a car accident last year I decided to move somewhere more equable. Alex said with a glimpse of solitude in his face. I'm sorry man, Mike sadly muttered. Ah you poor thing, Angela and Jessica almost simultaneously exclaimed. Eric, Tyler and Bella were silent though they were very sympathetic to his plight. It's quite alright, though I would suggest we move on to a less somber topic, Alex said trying to gleam. So, Cardiff, that's in the UK right? Eric curiously inquired. South coast of Wales, yes, Alex said before shoveling a fork full of coleslaw in his mouth. So that's why, Bella said with a half smile like she deciphered a great mystery. Why what? Alex said with a perplexed look on his face and a mouth full of coleslaw. The accent, Bella said with a half smile on her face. Oh, that, Alex chuckled. Well I tried to be less obtrusive as possible but I guess people easily pick up on the way I speak. Nah, it's cool man. Don't worry too much about it, Tyler said tapping his back. By the way, La Push baby, are you in? Eric then sleekly said, looking at Bella. Should I know what that mean? Bella replied, expressing slight confusion and trace amount of antipathy for what sounded very much like an innuendo. La Push down at the Quileute reservation. We're all going tomorrow, Mike explained. Yeah and there's a big swell coming in, Jessica further supplied. And I don't just surf the internet, Eric suddenly stood from where he sat and posed a mock surf border stance which prompted Mike to do the same in response before being pulled back by Tyler. Eric you stood up once, and it was a foam board, Jessica reminded him. But there's whale watching too. Come with us. Alex you should totally come too, Angela said trying to convince the two newcomers. Everyone is in agreement with her statement and began to cheer into persuading the two. It's La Push baby. La Push. Eric reiterated but in a somehow creepier manner. Sounds great, Alex said. A little creeped out from how Eric says, La Push, though he didn't let anyone notice it. Okay, I'll go if you stop saying that, Bella said munching on a cucumber before proceeding to the lunch line counter of the cafeteria. Seriously dude, it's creepy, Mike said in agreement. What? That's what it's called, Eric replied in an awkwardly fading voice. Admitting defeat but still trying to salvage a few shreds of his dignity. It's her isn't it? Alice inquired in a worried tone after seeing Edward painfully trying to control his urge. Edward didn't respond but his grip on a paper napkin he's holding tightened then he abruptly threw it on the table. That may not be our only problem, Naruto said while subtly tilting his head to point out Alex. The new kid. Emmett snorted with an unworried smirk. What do you mean? Jasper queried, looking at the other blonde with a slightly confused but curious expression. There's something not quite right about with this guy. He's not a vampire, I'll tell you that, but I suspect he's no ordinary human either, Naruto said in a serious tone, his eyes narrowing on the newcomer. He's kind of cute though. Rosalie involuntarily muttered, which Alice furtively concurred and earned a jealous look from Emmett. I tried to read him earlier, but his mind is like a labyrinth I can't get through. It's painful even to try, Edward hissed as he recalled the agonizing experience. Suddenly Alice looked like as if she's in immense agony, she held her head like it is being split into two. She felt a sharp pain as if the remnant of what used to be her soul was being distorted and torn by an unseen power. Alice, are you alright? What's happening? Jasper fretfully asked while holding her in his arms. My vision, it's really strange. It's like a hazy forest. I can't see anything but mist, then suddenly everything became distorted and incomprehensible, like looking at a kaleidoscopic vision of chaos. It was terrible, Alice replied, gasping from the strain of her unpleasant ordeal. Do you think he has something to do with this? Edward queried while the blonde and the rest of the Cullens suspiciously eyed the young man. I don't know, but it seems likely, Naruto replied. A long minute of uncanny silence reigned over them as they all wordlessly concluded that further investigation must be carried out before they confront the mysterious stranger. Meanwhile, Edward caught a gaze of Bella and decided to approach her. Bella was at the lunch line getting herself a salad that she somewhat assembled in an aesthetically pleasing manner. Edible art, said a voice that startled her into dropping an apple from the counter. But before the fruit could touch the ground, it was kicked up and gracefully caught on the palms of the voice's owner. Bella gazed up, but before she could compliment the skill she saw it was Edward. His eyes weren't brown anymore and he looks paler than before, though, surprisingly he is in a good mood. Bella, Edward greeted her with a smile. You know. Your mood swings is kind of giving me a whiplash, Bella retorted as she walked around the lunch line. I only said it would be better if we aren't friends, not that I don't want to be, Edward calmly said in a soothing voice. What's that even mean? Bella retorted with an inquiry in a somewhat irate tone. It means that if you're smart, you'll stay away from me. Okay, let's say for argument's sake that I'm not smart. Would you tell me the truth? Bella hopefully asked while looking at his eyes. No, probably not, Edward gawkily replied as he quickly severed his eye contact. Bella sighed and turned away from him as well. I'd rather hear your theories, Edward then said. At this point Eric, Alex and Jessica caught a glimpse of Mike staring jealously at Edward, who's talking to Bella. I considered you have radioactive spiders and kryptonite, said Bella, that made Edward smile in amusement. It's all superhero stuff, right? What if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the bad guy? Edward sighed in a serious tone, supplementing his sudden mood shift. You're not. I can see what you're trying to put off. But I can see that it's just to keep people away from you. It's a mask, Bella said, that made Edward's eyebrows furrowed together in contemplation of what he just heard. Why don't we just hang out? Everyone's going to the beach, come. I mean have fun, Bella said eloquently, that made Edward smile some more and genuinely considered to join them. Which beach? Edward asked. La Push, Bella replied, which made Edward's smile drop instantly like an icicle blasted by a flamethrower. Is there something wrong with that beach? Bella inquired. She was perplexed by Edward's sudden change of disposition. I don't know, it's just, Edward mumbled, and then he was awkwardly silent for a while and quickly glanced at Bella's friends behind him. It's just a little crowded, he retorted before walking out without any warning, further confusing the already dumbfounded Bella. You okay, Bella? Alex inquired with a sincere gleam. Yeah, why did you ask? Bella awkwardly answered as she lifted her tray. Well, you look kind of pensive, Alex replied ever so politely in the same awkward manner, which for some bizarre reason made Bella felt a little better. I'm good, thanks for asking, Bella responded with a smile. Ah, see. You look much more beautiful when you smile, Alex said, beaming as well, that made Bella blush. Whatever, is the only word she can cumbersomely utter before her face turned completely red. Are you sure you're okay? You look a little bit flushed. Would you like me to accompany you to the school infirmary? Alex said, looking her straight in the eyes, completely clueless of what he did but felt genuine concern for his new friend. I said I am fine, Bella agitatedly mumbled as she stormed back to their table, leaving a dazed Alex who still don't have any idea what just happened. Okay, Alex awkwardly mumbled. Maybe she has her period, Yup, that must be it, he thought, scratching his head in confusion. Looks like pretty boy is pulling a fast one on your girl. Naruto teased Edward that bridled the vampire and made his eyes snap in barely controlled anger, narrowing its gaze on the young man. He doesn't look too clever though, Edward sniffed and said as he continuously gave Alex unkind glares. I would revise that assessment if I were you, old chap, Naruto said in a mock accent akin that of Alex's, making Edward turn and look at the blonde with a blank expression. Naruto chuckled a bit before his tone became more serious. You see, in my experience, the one who played the fool is usually the most cunning and often the most dangerous, he said as he recalled his past altercations with Obito. Gym class. Crowley shirts, Storm skins, Newton shirts, Yorkie skins, Cullen shirts, Uzumaki skins. Coach Clapp continuously howled in a deep, sharp voice as he segregated his students for basketball. Oh yeah, you guys ready to play some ball? Naruto roared ecstatically. Basketball has been his favorite sport since he and Dr. Naismith invented it one rainy day, back in 1891. More than a century of practice and play made him practically unbeatable. He has been invited on more than one occasion to join the school varsity as people perceived him to have prodigious natural talent for the sport, offers he all but turned down without any explanation, much to the dismay and displeasure of Coach Clapp. Well, at least someone's happy about gym class, Alex thought in amusement seeing the overly passionate blonde. Oh man, I hate this, Eric sulked. Don't worry about it, man. At least we're on the same team, Alex sanguinely said to console him. He then tilted his head to subtly point out Mike, who's clearly not amused being teamed up with Edward, and apparently the feeling is mutual as the vampire can read the maledictions and less than pleasant things he's thinking. I wish I have your optimism, Eric replied. His gloomy mood has somewhat been slightly assuaged as he saw the humorous irked expression on Mike's face. Misery loves company, especially if the other guy is a little bit more miserable than you are. Oh, lighten up, buddy, Alex chuckled as he took off his shirt to prepare for the sport. The air was suddenly silent. And for the second time, time seemingly grinds to a halt. The myriad of girls in the vicinity blushed red, and for a fleeting moment most of the boys made themselves question their own gender preferences. Their eyes the size of dinner plates and their jaws nearly fell out as they beheld the shirtless Alex. The usual clothes he wore deceptively guised his lean but perfectly sculpted Greek god body. But that irksome piece of cloth is now gone and his singularly defined upper physique is all but bare for everyone to see. And a euphoria it was, especially for the vacant-eyed, seemingly tranced young women whose bliss-induced flushed faces are as red as the delicately blooming roses in the summer gardens of the Palace of Versailles. Edward felt the gnawing frustrations and despondency in his heart just grew as he caught a glimpse of Bella, who at the moment was so allured and captivated at the aesthetic paragon that is Alex. He may not be able to read her mind, but a single glance on her face is all that is needed to reckon the naughty fantasies in her head. Pretty boy equals 2, Edward equals zilch, Naruto teased. I would do something about that if I were you, he then continued with a playful smile on his face. Edward gave him an austere stare, which in reality is just a front to mask his jealousy. I don't know what you're talking about, he then scoffed and was about to walk out. I think we both know what I'm talking about. Don't go all emo on me when she picked him over you, Naruto said in a sagely but sarcastic tone that made Edward pause and come to his senses. What would you have me do then? Edward sneered in a rage-fueled but hushed, whispering voice as he finally snapped. Okay. First, calm down, I'm here to help you. Second, this guy plays in a completely different league. Let's admit the fact that your natural charms is no match for someone that looks like a gay guy designed in a genetics lab. You see, I did some research, and as if things aren't bad enough, I found out that Alex Stud Muffin over there is from some fancy aristocratic family. His real name is Lord Alexander Altyrus de Sanguinus Storm, if you're feeling formal, that is. That's why we should step up your game, ya. No. Naruto explained in the same sagely but this time encouraging tone. Step up my game. What do you mean? Edward inquired with a cloud of bewilderment in his face. Naruto's sagely aura suddenly dropped like a fly. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, he then said in an uneasy monotonous voice and with a blank face as he realized that this task wouldn't be that easy, in fact it would be very much the opposite. That stuff you said about being designed by a gay guy in a lab. You just ripped that from a movie, didn't you? Edward Riley inquired with a suppressed smirk on his deadpan face. That's not the point, ya. No. Naruto retorted in a comical aggravated outburst. Meanwhile, Alex as usual is completely oblivious and clueless of the effects he hadn't just said about his business, like nothing is amiss. Great. The last thing I need is some clueless himbo turning these girls into hormone-crazed rabid animals. Ridiculous. I don't get paid enough for this. Not even close. The etched coach Clapp thought sarcastically in derision and disbelief as he watched his distracted female students. Storm. Put your shirt back on, son. You and Newton are switching teams, he said, regaining his senses back and much of his authoritarian disposition. Mike seemed relieved being relinquished from the torment of teaming up with freaky Cullen, as he puts it. While Alex on the other hand don't seem too keen on taking up Mike's place as he is being eyed quite darkly by Edward. Lighten up, buddy. Eric teased as he saw Alex's staggered expression upon hearing Coach Clapp's announcement. I wish I have your optimism, Alex retorted in a sarcastic tone that sent Eric into a fit of roaring wild laughter. Yorkie. Shut up and get your ass in here. Yelled Coach Clapp that made everyone snigger. Irony is such a funny thing indeed. Dash dot 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 dash. That night Bella had a strange and rather eerie dream. She found herself in a stunning but uncanny realm overlooking the ruins of a once grand and magnificent ancient city that is now plagued by a haunting silence from eons of being forsaken by its equally antediluvian denizens. For reasons she couldn't fully comprehend, she decided to walk towards its direction and approach it. The ruins lie a mile or two to the east of her current location. With narrow but steady strides she manages to get closer and closer, passing a field of strange and alien-like vegetation on the interlude that looked like giant blood-tinged sunflowers that swayed rhythmically at the sound of her footsteps. Bella walked a little bit further and was finally able to gain enough proximity from the ruins for closer inspection. She was horrified, however, as she found out that the said ruins is a great and surreal necropolis of some sort. Its outer walls seemed to be constructed from quadrilateral crystal sarcophagi stacked upon each other like bricks. The corpses entombed within were transparently visible and wore the garbs of a forgotten civilization from time immemorial. They remained uncorrupted, projecting an illusion of life as they seemed to be only in a state of deep slumber, eternally dreaming. She mustered enough courage to walk past through the macabre wall and saw the mottled remnants of a once proud watchtower wrought of ghost white marble that appeared to have served as a defensive edifice in the past, along with myriad of curious obsidian monoliths etched with incomprehensible runes from a language long forgotten. Bella walked further and saw an eerie glow emanating from the portal of the inner citadel. Her curiosity impelled her feet to stride into the citadel's direction. As she entered its threshold, she beheld a grand and majestic tree the size of a luxury cruiser and as tall as a modern skyscraper. Within the heart of the tree's decussating spire-like inner branches lies what seemed to be a miniature blue sun wreathed with black coronal flares and with scintillating rays of dazzling effulgence. The intense and strange brilliance momentarily bereft Bella of her senses and enthralled her into a trance-like state. Bizarre and dark visions flashed before her eyes as the prodigious phantom rays of the elfin star touched her skin. She saw a great and terrible war between grotesque creatures under the command of a colossal cyclopean monster and humans with strange powers being led by Naruto and a rather unfamiliar raven-haired boy, like generals. The battle was horrific and bloody, but Naruto and his forces managed to secure a victory. Though, triumph was as bitter as defeat, for all the belligerents perished in its conclusion, save for the grief-stricken golden-haired warrior. Another vision materialized before Bella like vapor fogging a mirror. She saw Edward being stabbed with a shimmering ethereal lance by what appeared to be an angel, causing the former to crack and shatter into incalculable fragments like powdery broken glass. She then woke up, gasping from a dream she couldn't remember, nor could she recall the phantasmagorical and cryptic visions vouchsafed by the great tree and its clairvoyant star. Bella looked over her shoulder, unintentionally gazing upon her window, and saw a breathtaking sight. The night sky was strangely unhindered by the nigh ubiquitous clouds, and the landscape was bathed with the gentle iridescent shimmer from the stars and the peering moon, who revealed their light with uncanny luster, along with a great meteor shower that smote the skies with innumerable traces of glittering fiery trails. To be continued.